All right, so welcome everybody to our Intro to MSU Commons workshop. My name is Larissa Babak, and I am the User Engagement Specialist for the Humanities Commons as well as MSU Commons, and I'll talk about the relationship between those two momentarily. So I have been now working for the Commons since about April of last year, so going on a year. And my job as a user engagement specialist is essentially to talk to all of you MSU Commons users about what the Commons is and to develop more of our community efforts, as well as I do a lot of user support on the Humanities Commons end of the Commons. So now I'm going to pass it over to Kristen to introduce herself and tell us a little about her.
So hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Lee. I work in reference and discovery services in the MSU main library, and our help desk provides frontline tier 1 support for MSU Commons. So as part of our presentation, we'll talk about the help desk a little bit and how you reach us and how you can get help. And so I am one of the folks on that team. I am a veteran of MSU and teaching workshops. I've been with MSU about 21 years. And prior to being involved with the Commons, I taught workshops for D2L, a little bit for MediaSpace and Zoom. I still do workshops in the library for stable linking and for our citation management program called Zotero. So I'm really excited that workshops and instructions are kind of part of my liaison with the MSU Commons. My role primarily today will be to kind of monitor the chat, answer whatever questions I can, jump in if there's anything that Larissa's covering that I feel like, ooh, we should highlight X, and I want to point that out, I will. But I'm going to be, I think, more quiet between the two of us. Most of the presentation will be from Larissa, but please feel free to pose any questions you have in the chat throughout, and I will do my best to support those.
Thanks, Kristen. So as Kristen said, I'm going to be the main one talking at you today. But feel free to write anything in the chat if you have any thoughts or any questions as we go. We also are joined by several other members of our Commons team today. So I just want to thank them also for being here. And depending on what the questions are, we may or may not call on them to help us out. But overall, this is going to be basically just an intro to what the Commons is. There are really 4 main areas of the Commons I'm going to focus on, and they are profiles, sites, groups, and our core repository. We decided to build this workshop in the order that was what you all wrote in the registration form for what you wanted to hear about. So that's the order we'll go in, except we're going to highlight profiles first because they are kind of like the building block of where everything else in the Commons goes. And then we'll also cover briefly how you can use MSU Commons in your courses if you are teaching. We'll wrap it up with some resources that you can use if you have more questions, which you probably will at the end of this presentation. And then we'll end with our Q&A. So I'm going to jump in. So what is MSU Commons? So hopefully if you're here, you at least have read the little blurb in our registration about what the Commons is. But to summarize, MSU Commons is part of a larger network that is the Humanities Commons Network. And on my slide, I wrote it as being a scholarly social network, although I think that one thing you will learn throughout this presentation is that we're much more than just some sort of scholarly social network. We do a lot more than that. But the Humanities Commons Network is about 50,000 users worldwide. We are completely hosted and sustained by MSU. So everything that falls within the Humanities Commons, the work that we do, that is from MSU. And MSU Commons is actually our first institutional node of our expanding network. So as you can see on this slide, I have a list of some of the other organizations that have some sort of membership on the Commons, including MLA, Haystack, University Presses, our Listen, which is art librarians, and then the Society for Architectural Historians. But MSU Commons is our first node that is actually based at a university. So we are also right now excited because we're going to be expanding outside of the humanities into STEM as well. You may have seen there was a news article a few months ago about Deber Plus Commons, which is essentially going to be in a STEM commons that we're going to be working on launching. The name of it might change from DBER Plus Commons, but it's going to be very much focused on STEM and education. So we are an expanding network, and we are really excited that hopefully as we expand, we will have more opportunities to talk to you about some of the different projects that we're working on. So this today, I'm going to focus mainly on MSU Commons. I believe everybody here is an MSU Commons user. And the one thing, though, before I jump into this, I should just clarify is that although we are part of a larger Humanities Commons network, anything that is available to you in MSU Commons is also available on Humanities Commons. So how I like to think about it is Humanities Commons is the big umbrella, and then all of those other networks that I mentioned are kind of like just the spokes. And so we'll focus on MSU Commons, but if you are also just looking at Humanities Commons general, or if you know someone that wants to sign up for Humanities Commons and you want them to learn a little more about the Commons, the information I'm talking about today applies to both. Now, specifically for MSU Commons, who can create an account? So if you are a current student, a staff member, a faculty member, a retired faculty or staff member, you can create an MSU Commons account specifically. Anybody can register and use Humanities Commons. So as I said, if you have a friend that wants to take advantage of the things that I'm going to talk about today, but they are not at MSU, they can create a Humanities Commons account and they still can do the same things. We also have sometimes had a situation where somebody was potentially like a grad student and then they moved on to another institution or another job, but they still wanted to have access to their account. And we can absolutely make sure that you still can access the Commons. In those cases, usually we then will move your registration from MSU Commons to Humanities Commons, but you won't lose access to any of your sites or any of the stuff that you've put in your profile. You still can do essentially the same things. So to get started, you're going to go to commons.msu.edu. When you go to the home screen, there will be a little spot in the top of the screen that says register and log in. To register, obviously, if you've never been there before, you'll need to register. And once you do, you can log in and you'll be able to access all the things I'm about to talk about. So there are really four main functions, and I mentioned these already, of MSU Commons and what it can do. Profiles are essentially just your hub for all of your information and activity. It's kind of like your central place of sharing who you are and the work that you do. Sites, which are WordPress hosted websites, and I will get into more details about how you can use them and some examples. Groups, which is a smaller space where you can collaborate with your peers. And then the core repository, which is our main area for data sharing. I'm going to start with profiles because, as I said a little bit before, profiles are a really good hub to think about where you might get started if you're new to the Commons and kind of how you can think about building your digital presence. So profiles are a central space where you can represent yourself and your work, and they're very easily customizable and shareable. So in a way, they are somewhat similar to other social media profiles in that you can update them with your activity. But in a way, there is also just an element of you can really get into specifics about projects that you're working on, essentially in creating your digital presence. One advantage to creating a profile is that if you don't have time or you don't need to create something that's a full portfolio website, you can do this very fast. You can update your profile within 10 to 15 minutes if you want to. And you can obviously spend more time if you'd prefer that, but perhaps maybe you just want to have a space online where you can share the work that you're doing, but you don't want to take the time and energy to create a full website. That's the main advantage of profiles, is that you can do that very quickly. And the other advantage of profiles is that you can update it with both your formal and informal academic projects. So perhaps you have deposited some stuff in core and you want that to be available for people to see. That will show up in your profile. However, also maybe you've created some YouTube videos for a course and you want to link to those so that those that view your profile can see some of those examples. Or maybe you've published something on a blog or somewhere else that you want to share, but it would not necessarily go in the core repository. you can put all of that informal and formal work on your profile linked out so that people that view it can get a better sense of what sorts of work that you do. So as I've mentioned, this is a central hub for your activity. And so usually the first thing that I would encourage as a user engagement specialist of the Commons is to, once you get onto the site, update your profile with whatever you want. Some sections you will update yourself, and you can add, as I said, as little or as much detail as you want. And then other sections will be automatically updated as you use the Commons more. And I will, on the next slide, point to what those are. And then from there, not only do you have the place to like type in your info, but you can then link to your other social media accounts like Twitter, Facebook, your Orchid account, Mastodon. You can link to projects, YouTube videos, whatever those might be. And then you can also add your CV directly into the Commons. So this is a quick list of all of the profile sections. The ones on the left are the ones that you will automatically update as you use the Commons. So as you begin to explore the features, and I'm going to actually show you the Commons in a minute, so you'll get a better sense of how this is situated. But as you join more groups and create sites and start writing things and sharing your work, those things will automatically add onto your profile. So if you share something in core, you don't then have to go in and link it somewhere else. It will immediately populate, so everything will go in one place. Then you can also have the customizable areas that you can toggle on and off. So maybe, as I said, maybe you have like an upcoming talk or conference that you want to post on your profile, and you want to have a link to the abstract on the conference site. You can do that. Or if you're not going to any conferences soon and you don't really see that you need to have that section, you can hide it. So lots of ability to turn things on and off and represent yourself in the way you want to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump onto MSU Commons to actually show you what a profile looks like. So when you go to commons.msu.edu, this is what it'll look like. Once you log in, you'll have your name and your profile picture here. And then if I go to my profile, and this one is going to be pretty empty because it's a test account, but you can see that this is essentially what your template will look like. And if I click on edit, then I have my sections here that, as I've mentioned, you can all go ahead and update. So you have your social links that you can automatically populate. And once you add these in, they will appear right here on the top. Then I'm going to try not to scroll too quickly so you don't get dizzy. Then the Commons groups and recent Commons activity areas, as I said, these will automatically update as you join more. And then you have your text boxes where you can add in projects, upcoming talks, memberships, all of these different things. The only other thing on this that I wanted to mention is that also you can change your profile and your cover image as well. From your profile, if you go back up here, you can access all of your different functions and features on the Commons. So this is going up to we consider this part of your profile, but essentially this is where you can toggle some of your settings as you're looking to kind of modify things. So all of that, I think, is probably pretty straightforward. Profile can be very easily updated. If you want to find other members of the Commons and view their profiles, if we go over here and click on members, this is where we'll get our full list of everybody that is on the Commons network. So MSU Commons specifically will filter here, and then you can also click on all members. And then I'm going to actually show Kathleen's profile because hers is a good example of one that has a lot of, has been updated with a lot of different things. So you can see what a full profile looks like. So as I mentioned, she has her social links up here, her academic interests she was able to add, and then the groups that she's a part of, you can see what those are. This can be a nice way sometimes if you find a scholar whose work you're interested in, you can potentially join the groups that they're part of. So it's a good way to make those connections. And then you can see as well here, we have all of the work that she shared in core, her other publications as well, blog posts, which this is something that's a fairly new feature. As you begin to write on a Commons site, this will automatically update with the blog post that you've written, so that way you have the an area that you can go to see specifically what you've worked on based on your Commons site activity. And then some other sections here as well. So as I said, this is pretty basic, but you can have a lot of options to update and customize as needed, which is pretty exciting. And it can be a nice central place to get started on the Commons. So now that I've talked about profiles, I'm going to just pause for 1 minute to see if there are any questions before I move on to the next section of our workshop.
It looks like there's a question from Casey in the chat.
Hi, yes. Kristen already answered it for me, so thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, so with that, as I've said before, if you have more questions, please add them to the chat. And then I am going to move on and now talk about our next section, which is, there we go, sites. So as I've already said, we have the ability in MSU Commons to design a WordPress website. And so just like most things on the Commons, there is many different ways that you can use sites. A few of them that we see pretty regularly are building a personalized portfolio website, building a conference website, basically anything that you would like to represent in a website format, you can do so on the Commons. This is also one thing that you can do as well with sites is use them to enhance your personal portfolio or promote a project. So a lot of times when I'm explaining the Commons to users, I like to say, think of the sites areas being your kind of public facing place for a project or where you want to show your work and showcase it out. And sites are very well indexed and easily findable. So if you are looking for something on Google or looking for a Commons site, or you want to direct people to find your work, one of our advantages is that we are very well indexed. So if you have that project that you want to share out and for people to see it, creating a site on the Commons, it has that ability to be pretty easily findable. So a few notes on some of our technical specs. So we use WordPress and we just updated to the newest version, which is 6.1.1. One of the advantages of WordPress is that there's really no web maintenance required. And so once you create a site on the Commons, it will remain hosted on the Commons. You don't have to pay to have it hosted elsewhere. You don't have to go through any of those kind of web maintenance pieces. It is there and you do not have to worry about paying anything to be a part of it. We have many themes and plugin options available. And so once you create your site, you can go into that WordPress dashboard and customize as much as you like. We do have some limits just based on what is offered generally in WordPress. And if you have any specific questions on that, I would recommend reaching out to us individually. We do regularly get emails from users asking if we can add a theme or a plugin, and depending on what it is and if our dev team has investigated how secure it is and whatnot, we will sometimes add those things in. My only caveat here would just be if you are planning to design a website that you want to have a ton of customization. So if it's something where you want to just completely not use a theme and build it from scratch, or you really want to make a lot of major changes to the theme itself, then this might not be the best option for you. This is a great option if you want to create a website quickly and customize it to a certain extent. But if it's something where you really want to get into the weeds, I would say you might want to talk to us about finding another option because it actually might not be the best place. In WordPress, we offer we offer themes with both full site editing and legacy themes. So full site editing has been something that WordPress is improving to allow for more simple customization. And so we tend to direct people to use full site editing themes over legacy themes, but we do offer both. So that is an option. And then any site that is created in MSU Commons will have the domain name of commons.msu.edu. Any site that is created on Humanities Commons will have hcommons.org as the domain name. So we do not offer custom domains at the moment. It will fall in there under that category. And the other thing I wanted to just note about sites here was that we do have privacy settings that can make your site as available to the public as you want it or as limited as you want it. So if you are maybe creating a website for a project and at the beginning you just want 3 or 4 people to have access, or you just want members of the Commons to access it, you can set your privacy settings to be that. If you want to make it where anyone on the web can view your project and learn about it, you can set that. And you can obviously update that at any time, depending on where you are and what you want to get across about your website. I've already talked a little bit about this, but you essentially have many, many options for what you can create your website about. Portfolio sites are a pretty normal one where users want to represent their work beyond just their Commons profile. They want to potentially create a full website that they can use, whether it's applying for jobs or otherwise. We have a number of digital journals that are on the Commons or are migrating to the Commons, especially since we're open access. Those journals have found that they can create a site and share their previous issues or their new issues out. Event planning is another one, digital projects or digital anthologies. I mean, basically like any site that falls within the realm of academic or sharing your work are ways that you can use the Commons. And I'm going to talk more later specifically about course sites, but that's another way that you can use it is you can create for your History 101 class or your Bio 101 class. If you want to use sites, you can use that also through MSU Commons. So now I'm actually this is an example site, but I'm going to jump back onto the Commons so we can look at this without me having my slides up. So to create a site, it's very straightforward. There's a couple ways you can do this, but one way is if you just go up to your profile and down to sites, you have an option to create a site. And this is the form that you can fill out to create. You'll choose what your domain is. You can set the title for your site. And then as I've already mentioned, you have your site privacy settings. And as I said, you can also change this at any time. So if later on you want to make your site more customizable, you can do so. And once you do that, it will create the website. You'll have access to the WordPress backend. From that dashboard, that's where you can get into the more specifics of things like privacy and the tools that are available to you. You can add other users to be admins if you want them to. One note on that is they do need to have a Commons account. So just make sure anybody that you want to have access to editing your site is on the Commons. Everything is basically from that point available to you. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing you around that WordPress dashboard because there are a lot of resources online about it. We also, in our support links that we'll cover later, have more resources, but it's all accessible right as soon as you create your site. You can also view what sites are already out there by clicking on sites from our handy navigation menu here. And so if a site is available, you can click on it and view it. Anything that is set to be public, you can get to from this window right here. Now, I did want to just show you a couple sample sites because I think it's sometimes helpful to see what something looks like. So the first one is actually our portfolio site of our project manager, Bonnie, who's here with us today. So her site does a really nice job of representing her own work. So you can see the way that she's created her portfolio site is she has her news as her homepage. So that way we can quickly see what projects she's been working on. You can set your homepage to be something that's static, or you can make it interactive, whatever you'd like. She has her bio here where you can learn a little bit more about her and the projects that she's worked on. This is something where, once again, you can customize it as much as you want. And then also, I'm just going to highlight her projects area because she has links to the various projects and events that she's taken part of. So This is something that you can create pretty quickly and easily, especially with certain themes in WordPress. Certain I personally think are a little quicker to customize than others, but this is something where a profile is going to be your really fast way to represent yourself. And the site might take a little more time, but it's something that once it's created, you can have it out there. You can quickly share a link to others. It's pretty easy to access. I mentioned a few minutes ago that there are some digital journals on the Commons, and this is one of them that I personally really think is one of the best designed, and this is the Journal of the Northern Renaissance. They have done some work to customize this site a bit more than just having a template out of the box, but you can see that the way that they've designed it, it's very simple to read. It's very easily from an accessibility perspective, it's very accessible. They have their links to their various issues, and I'm just going to click on one here so you can see what this looks like. So they then from here, they have their links to the various file types that they have available. Something that as I said, they have taken some time to customize this a bit, but it's once you set up that template in WordPress, you can very quickly and easily update it. So I'm also just going to go to reviews as well to show what that looks like. So pretty straightforward, just very simple to customize, very easy to read and view. And then lastly, the other example I want to show is a conference site. So one other way that the Commons is used, and I'm going to talk about this more in groups as well, is for event planning. And this was one for a conference communicating the past in the digital age. The look of this site has kind of a similar feel to a blog, but as you can see, they have a link to their proceedings. If we scroll down, they have another update on the conference. They have their kind of summary of what went on. And I'm now going to go back up and show you what the actual program looks like. So then they have their agenda of what they covered as part of the conference. So with links out to the abstracts for the conference, which is also nice. So very quick and easy to update. I'm guessing they did do a little bit of customization to get their banner set up, but just a few examples of how you can use sites. So lots of different options available as a whole. All right, I am now going to once again pause if there are any questions. All right.
We just had one in the chat, Larissa, about being able to make changes to the template once you've created it originally. And I just noted that, yes, on the WordPress backend, you have the ability to go in and make any adjustments once you've done that initial creation.
Yep, exactly. So once you create your site, then you have the ability to go in and edit as much as you can. All right, great. Thanks, Kristen. So I'm going to keep going in this case. And let me once again switch back. I'm going to skip ahead a few slides here since we talked about these. All right, so next I'm going to talk about groups. And groups, I've already alluded to this, but I like to think of groups as being more of a small group collaboration space. And groups can actually have more than just a small number of people, but groups are essentially your space where you can connect and collaborate directly with other scholars. Whereas a site is probably more of a projection, I guess, in some ways. It's like your way of kind of broadcasting things out, like writing a blog or whatnot. Groups allow for more collaboration in a smaller environment. There are privacy settings that allow groups to be as available to everybody on the Commons or as limited as you want. And I'll get into the specifics of that in a second. But part of what you can think about as groups as being as a place where you can have a small working group collaborate on a project, or it can be a large place where you just share information and knowledge. So once again, lots of different use cases. One of the things that I find most useful about groups is being able to find core deposits relevant to specific research or interests. So one example of a group on the Commons is digital art history. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can join that group. And then as various scholars have deposited things in core related to that topic, they will appear in that group. So it's a really nice way to share your work beyond just adding it to the core repository. You can actually make sure it gets into a channel where people who are interested in it read it. And then I've talked about this slightly with sites, is this idea of kind of sharing your public facing project out. What's nice about groups is that it can be both a behind the scenes space where you collaborate, as well as have a public facing side. So we do have some groups on the Commons where they actually have a private group where they work on their project, but then they have a public facing site where anybody can read about the project and find out about the work they're doing. And once I show an example of this, I think it'll make more sense. But essentially, you have your area where you can be kind of your private behind the scenes area, and then also your public facing area. Some groups have a lot of members, can have, 50 and up. Some groups have just 2 or 3. So you can, based on how you want to use the function, you can decide how many you want to invite or how public and private you want to make it. So the features that are available in a Commons group, you have your activity feed, which is basically your space where all of your activity in your group will show up. So if people are depositing items to core and sharing it, they will go there. If you have people writing on the discussion board, if you have site activity or things that are going on in that area, everything will go into the activity feed. You can also post notifications directly in the activity feed as well. So that's your aggregator for everything happening in the group. Discussion boards, I'm pretty sure most of you are probably familiar with what a discussion board is, and that is one of the most used features of groups. You can post on the discussion board, reply on it. The discussion board can also be used as kind of a pseudo listserv where you can post on it and it will email out group members if you set your settings to be a certain way. So lots of different features can be used for that. There is an events calendar in groups as well to share about events. I've already mentioned this, but you can create a group site. So sites can be for you individually to share your portfolio, or if your group is working on a project and you want to create a site to share about it, you can do that as well. Core deposits can be shared directly in groups. I mentioned that already. And then the other 2 things that I haven't talked about yet in groups are docs and files. So basically, a doc is the docs area of the Commons allows you to, in your group, have multiple people collaborating on one area of writing. So they are organized by folders. And then what you can do is you can have multiple people working on the same doc to edit it. So one example of this is that there is a group, and I believe it is a music theory group, where they have created a bibliography in docs. And everybody that's in the group has the ability to go in and edit that specific doc where they can add in, a new composer or add in a resource. Essentially, everybody in the group can edit it there. The difference with files is that files is basically just file sharing. So let's say that you're in a group and you want to share a privacy policy, or you want to maybe share a meeting agenda and you just want people in the group to see it. You don't want it to go on the discussion board. You can share things in files. So docs is something where everyone can edit. Files is where just one person can upload a file. One important distinction with both docs and files is that they are not shared in core. So the core repository is going to be open access, but docs and files are going to be limited to the group. So if you share a privacy policy as a file in your group and you don't want everybody to be able to see it, you just want the group to see it, then it will not end up in core. It will just be in that one place. So you just know that, if you want it to be shared widely, share it in core. If you don't, docs and files are a better location for those things. So I've already mentioned this, but there are 3 different kinds of groups. Public groups where everybody can see and access. One example of this is the Open Access Books Network on the Humanities Commons. They have a public group that has many members. Everybody can access and see it. Any of you as MSU Commons users can join that group and use the features and view their group and view their site. We're going to look at this in the Commons in a minute, but if it's a public group, there will be a big join group button next to it in the groups directory. So you will know that you have the ability to join the group once you are logged into the network. Private groups, you have to have permission by a group admin to join. So let's say I'm creating a project on, let's say, digital art history, and I don't want everybody to be able to access it. I just want the 5 people that I'm working with. What I can do is create my group, and in the settings, set it to private. Once I do that, I have the ability to email the group members that I want to join the group, and then they can join it that way. Or if you're browsing groups and maybe somebody has said, I created this group on digital art history, you can join it. You will see in that group's directory a request membership button. And that means that you can request it, the group admin will get a notification, and then you'll be able to join. So private groups, you have to have an invite. Public, anybody can access. Hidden is very similar to private, but the main difference is that you have to be invited to join, and it will not appear in the group's directory. So there will not be a listing there that will have a request membership button because it is a hidden group. The main use that we see of this on the Commons is in some of our orgs where they potentially have like a task force working on a specific issue, and they don't want to have it where they get a bunch of requests from people who are not part of that task force joining. Because it is hidden, that group can have their own space and use all the same functions, but it will not appear for everybody to join. So as I said, the main use of that would probably be more from a organizational perspective, but perhaps you do have some sort of project. You don't want to have it listed for everyone to see that it's out there. It's just specific to a certain group of people. You can create a hidden group. And also, just like with the other features, you can always change this around at any time. So if you have it hidden and then you decide you want private or whatnot, you can always go back and make a change. So now I am going to, once again, jump back into the Commons and show you what groups look like. So give me 1 second. I think I accidentally closed the window I wanted to open. All right, sorry, you're going to see me jumping around here for a minute. This is what happens when I have my tabs open. Okay, so in groups, when I click on groups, this will take me to a list of all the groups in MSU Commons. If you go to Humanities Commons, you can see all the groups on the Commons in general. If you want to create a group, you'll obviously click the create a group button, and then this will take you through the steps of creating a group. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but you add your name and your description. You can toggle your privacy settings. You can decide if you want to create a group site. You can create your discussion board, start your docs, edit the group photo, add files, all of these things. Also, you can at any time, as I've said before with everything, you can always go back and turn something on or off. So if you go through the process and you decide, I don't want a discussion board now, but then in 3 months, you're like, we should have a discussion board, you can turn it on. So nothing is limited when you create the group in particular. Now, once you create your group, you'll have access to it. You can get to it through your profile or through the group's directory area. And I'm going to now show a sample group so you can get a look at what this is like. So this is a good one to use as an example because they're doing a lot of the things that groups can do on the Commons. So the MSU Art, Science, Culture Collaboration. Oh, you know what? Before I do this, though, I am going to go back for a second. So here we have an example of a public group. So you can see anybody can join this as a member of MSU Commons. If you want to get their group updates, you can join. These other groups here, this looks like a course group. You have to request membership. So there's an example of a private group. And so if you scroll through here, you can see we have our different groups with their different options. So once I am in this group, we can go to the discussion board, which looks basically just like any other discussion board. If you're at all have been on a discussion board, you have your topic, you have your posts. You can then, anybody that's interested can update. So the features of discussion boards, similar to any other discussion board. As I've mentioned, activity is your aggregator of all your things that are happening in your group. So this is where posts on a site will show up, posts on a discussion will show up. If there are core deposits that are added to a group, they will be here. Then this group, I believe, does have a site. So let me show you what that looks like. So yeah, so they have a website. So you can see it's housed within MSU Commons, and then they use their site, it looks like, to have a little bit of additional information about what their group does. They have some news articles here. They have a calendar here. So this is another thing that you could do, is potentially link to a Google Calendar or another form of calendar to see what kinds of events are going on or share those things. So integrated directly into the group itself. It doesn't look like this group has any core deposits. I'll show another example in a minute of a group that has some core. But then docs is also, it looks like they don't have any, but this would be where those would be listed. This is where, as a group member, you could click on a folder and go in and edit. Same with files. I don't see anything here, but that's where you would go if someone has updated a file and you want to take a look. And then you can see all of the members of the group as well if it's a public group. As I said, I think now what I'm going to do is go to an example of one that has some core deposits so you can see what that looks like. So this was one specifically on Humanities Commons. There we go. So you can see here about 9 days ago, this one was deposited into the group. So you can see when it was deposited. If I click on the link, I can view the deposit itself. This is the text of the description of the deposit. So if you are looking around groups, especially in Humanities Commons, and you find a group that looks like it's something you're interested in learning more about, you can very quickly jump into that group and find your core deposits of things you're interested in. So this one has like 212 deposits. So that's a really nice number to take a look at. So just another way that you can use groups while you're on the Commons. All right, so that is a very quick summary of what groups can do. Once again, I'm going to pause. Are there any questions before I move on to talking about the core repository?
For the benefit of the recording, I'm going to repeat the question that we had in the chat because I don't know how easily accessible that is from the recording. Someone did ask about if they already have a WordPress site, can they create a group on the Commons and then link those two together? And Bonnie gave me some clarification here as well, where yes, you can, but if it's not already on the Commons, the site has to be migrated to the Commons first before you would be able to connect them. So it might be something that needs some administrative assistance to do, but it can be done.
Yeah. Thanks Bonnie and Kristen. Yeah, that's what we would say is if you have specific questions about migrating your site, that's one to reach out. We do work to try to make that possible. But yeah, it sometimes depends on the features and the theme and whatnot. So thanks. Anything else? All right. So let's now look at the core repository. So, all right, let's skip these. Okay. So the core repository, which I've now mentioned about 100 times so far. Now let's talk a little bit about what that is and what it can do on the Commons. So the core repository, it can serve as a permanent home for your work. Our core repository is a space where you can share your projects and work in an open access setting. And it's a really great option, not just if you've already have some journal articles or things that you want to share that have already been published, but it's also a great place to share things that maybe you don't have another option of where you can share it and you want to. So perhaps maybe you've conducted some interviews as part of a project. You have IRB approval to publish the full transcripts, but you don't have a specific space to do that because they're going to be part of another journal article or something. You could potentially share those in core. We have that happen sometimes. We also have seen scholars that they have done videos or podcasts that maybe have not really fallen in the realm of I'm publishing this in a journal, but I want to share it. All great options of places, all great options of things that you can share in core. I've mentioned this already, but it's very easy to find stuff that is shared in core through feeds to Google Scholar and other aggregators. When you add things to core, they will often populate your Google Scholar account as well, depending on how you're logging in and accessing the Commons. So just increased discoverability of making sure people can find your work. And everything that goes into core is assigned a DOI, which creates a permanent citable digital record for your work. That way you have that DOI number that you can share out. It is automatically generated. You don't have to go through any other process to get that. Everything in core will get that DOI. And that's a really great way also to make sure that your work can be shared. I've mentioned this already, but the core repository is completely open access. So everything there you can access and view. Right now, if you want to go in and look at all 20,000 items in core, you can do so. And all of it is ready for you to view and access. I've already said this, but the DOI number that is assigned to all deposits, once you go through the process of adding something to core, it will receive that DOI. And we use the fast subject heading system for organizing and keeping a metadata hierarchy of those deposits. So we actually just fairly recently migrated to fast. That was officially completed, I believe it was in August. So that's been a really exciting development for us, that when you deposit something to core, you can find and add it to fast very quickly and easily. Core deposits are permanent and are completed works. So if you are working on a draft of something, core is not the place to add it. Once something is added to core, it will be permanently on the Commons forever. We do allow edits for up to 24 hours after something is added. So if you accidentally upload the wrong file, or you maybe did not get the right metadata, you can go in and make changes. But in general, once something is on the Commons, we will not remove it unless it is a very clear violation of our policies, or if it is something where we get a notification that the author did not have permission to publish it, or there was a copyright violation. Other than that, it will be permanently there and stored for you. So it will be out there, as I said, unless there are very extenuating circumstances. The first time that you deposit to core, we do have a process for reviewing those deposits. Somebody on our team goes through, and all they basically do is just make sure that the metadata that you have provided on your deposit matches with the actual item. And just also to make sure that the deposit itself does not violate any of our policies. But once you have done a deposit one time, then it will be you can keep making core deposits. It's really just a first time check to make sure that everything matches up. What can you deposit to core? And I've mentioned this already, but you have many, many, many different options of things you can deposit to core. You can deposit, as I said, traditional kinds of publications like journal articles or conference proceedings, but also things like audio files, music files, videos, podcasts, seminar papers. If you're a grad student and you wrote a really awesome paper in a class and you want to share it, but you're not seeking out a formal publication, you can do that there. Images, essays, really anything that falls into the very loose category of academic can go onto the Commons. There is not a limit on what sorts of things you can deposit, as long as it is in the very loose way scholarly in nature. We sometimes have artists that will deposit their work to core because of the nature of their work. So anything that can fall into that category is something that can go into the repository. This is a list of the media types that we offer, and I'm not going to go through all of these now, but just emphasizing again, any sorts of things that are in these file types will be able to go into the repository. And then the only caveat here is that we do have a size limit of about 100 megabytes. So anything that's over that, it will not work to deposit. You can also only deposit one item at a time. So if you are potentially working on a project where you have a bunch of files that are part of one thing or one project, you will have to upload those to core as separate files. You could potentially have one zip file, but essentially that right now is really the limit on, you can only have one item. As part of our core redesign, and I'll talk about this more at the end of this presentation, we're getting to a point where you will be able to have more than one version of one core deposit, which is going to be really an exciting update for us, because then if you have, a conference proceeding that became a journal article, you could potentially deposit those together. But right now it is a limit of one item at a time. And when you publish your deposit, and also of anything that's already there, Creative Commons licenses are available to you to use, and you can very quickly link to the Creative Commons website to see what is available. So as I mentioned, it's an open access repository, so you can decide when you're publishing your work how accessible and how much do you want users to be able to view or edit or take a look at what you've done. So now I am once again, for I think the final time actually of this workshop, going to go back onto the Commons and show you what core looks like. So let me go back to MSU Commons. And so when you're in MSU Commons, if you go to core repository, this is our launch page where you can either upload your work or find your open access materials. So if I have written, or let's say I have a PowerPoint that I want to share in core from a conference presentation I did, and I go to upload, all that I have to do, once I agree to the terms and conditions, which I'm going to do that, this is what you will fill out every time you make a core deposit. You'll select your file from your computer, and once it uploads, then you can choose whether or not it's been published or not. If it has been published, then you can use this Sherpa Romeo database to search for the existing DOI. But if it hasn't and you choose not published, then it will get assigned its own DOI. You can add in your title, you can add in the type of item it is, you can add in your description or abstract. At this point, you can then add any additional contributors beyond yourself. So you can add in as many authors as you need. And then, as I mentioned, you can share core deposits in groups. So when you go here, you can type in the name of the group. If you're a member of groups already, you can select those groups that you want to say, I want to share this to digital art history or whatever group that is. And then you can pick your fast subject headings as well, based on what fits closest with your article or whatever it is. Tags can be used also if there's something that is connected to your deposit, but it's not in FAST. So tags are like your additional way of categorizing the item if it's not here. You select your file type, you select your language. I think all of this is pretty straightforward. Any additional notes or items. And then when you get to publication type, depending on what it is, this form will change. So since I had a PowerPoint presentation, it's not listed here, but if I have a book, I can then add in more information on the book specifically. If it's a newspaper article, you have these other sections that you can fill out. So you have a lot of places that you can make sure your metadata is as updated as possible. Once you're done, as I mentioned, you can select your Creative Commons license automatically. That way you can choose how you want it to be shared, and you can read more of those if you go to this link here. And if you, for some reason, want to embargo the deposit, so maybe your publisher has told you can't get that article out there for a year or something like that, you can choose yes, and then find the journal and select the length of time. Otherwise, when you click the deposit button, and this is not going to work because I don't have anything here, it will then automatically add it to core. Our team will get a notification, as I mentioned, if it's your first time review. It will sit in pending review status until someone on our team reviews it, which is usually a few days. And then it will appear in the core repository. So a really simple process to add things. And once it's there, then you can send that link out to whoever you want to read it or share that DOI. I also just wanted to show what the deposits look like. So this is then our core repository. So you can search this out to be just specific to MSU itself, or you can look at all deposits on Humanities Commons. When you can scroll through this to find things. I'm going to choose a deposit so you can see what the page looks like once it's populated. Let's see. How about this one? Let's look at this. So here's an example of one. So you can link directly to your profile. As I've mentioned, once something is deposited in core, it will update on your profile. We can see that this one was added to these various groups based on what the author felt was relevant. We have our subject headings, we have our DOI, and then we can either view it in our browser or download. So pretty straightforward. Once again, I feel like I've said that a lot. I feel like I've said a lot of things a lot in this presentation, but very straightforward to add things to core, find them. And then have them all kind of linked together. One of the main benefits of the Commons, as you can see, is that everything can be really interconnected. Once again, I'm going to pause and see if there are any more questions on core before I get into talking about MSU Commons in courses.
I have a question. So I know it varies based on publishers' policies, but say you have something that's been published, so it has a DOI, and you are allowed to post it. It won't receive a second DOI, correct? It will just assign or apply the existing DOI.
Yep, it'll apply the existing one.
Oh,
so yeah, it won't.
Bonnie says it will receive the second DOI.
Oh, it will? Bonnie, do you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, this was a question I actually went to Kathleen with not too long ago. The DOI lookup in the core deposit form really is just to pull metadata in, but it will receive a second DOI on the Commons currently.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that.
Yep.
Learning something new every day. Okay, so thanks. Yeah, so then actually it will.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to keep going. So switching once again back over into my slides. Using MSU Commons for courses. So there were a few people that on the form that we sent out definitely said they wanted to hear a little bit about how MSU Commons can be used in teaching. So here are just a few ways that users in the past have used MSU Commons specifically in their course. The core repository is a great place to share your teaching materials. So your syllabus, if you have assignment sheets, anything that you want to share out more broadly, you can share that in core. We definitely have pretty regular uploads of syllabi. So even if you're looking for like some sort of example of a syllabi for something in your class, you can find that in core to even use and potentially repurpose for your own class. Creating a private or hidden group can be something to do for the discussion board or other features in the group. The reason why we would always recommend with teaching to use private or hidden as opposed to public is because of FERPA. So we do have some courses on the Commons that they will use the groups option, but definitely you'll want to make sure that you are very clear with your students that they are signing up for something that is separate from their Blackboard, or actually MSU I think uses D2L now that I think about it. So separate from D2L. But we would always recommend using private or hidden for anything related to coursework. Some courses do use a group site, and they'll basically just use it as a blog for students to write posts about a reading or their work. So that's always an option. They can also, students could potentially use sites to create some sort of blog as part of their course. So if maybe you have a component of a project where you want students to be writing more publicly and sharing their writing out, you could have them potentially do that. And you could also have students do that and then just limit the privacy settings so just you or just the course could see it. So some options there. And then in general, this isn't really necessarily related to a course specifically, but you can encourage students to enhance their profiles on the Commons. So we have a lot of grad students who use the Commons as their space where they can share their well-rounded profile without actually creating a portfolio website. Or as I said, maybe they have a seminar paper that they really want to share or that you think is worthy of being in the repository, but they don't really know where they can share that. Enhancing a student's profile, then they have an academic place for their work that can be used and potentially even maybe shared with future employers or in a certain context where they're applying for a position, maybe even at the university, and they can say, oh, take a look at my writing samples. They're all on the Commons, something like that. I do have a couple sample course sites here, and I'm not going to actually show these because they have some hidden privacy options because of the fact that they are for courses. But this was a course site that's on the Commons, and you can see that they've organized their site with having their readings based on each week. So then students could go here and get to the links for those things. Here's another one that's a little bit of a different layout, but similar option where for each week they have the links to the various readings. And then the final one, which is more of a blog setup. So you can see from recent posts, the student has written their blog post right on their site. The professor can access it. They have the ability to customize the site and whatnot. So just a few options that you could potentially consider. This is another one. If you want some more ideas, feel free to reach out to us and we can point you in the direction of some other ideas you might be able to use. Or if you have questions about privacy related to this, we can always do our best to answer your questions. All right. So now with that, just a couple more slides before we jump into our Q&A. So I've talked a little bit about some of the things that we're currently working on, and our team is expanding, and we are in the process of really some awesome projects that will be enhancing the Commons and making it even more accessible and user-friendly. So one of them is our Invenio redesign of the core repository, which is going to be a full redesign of core, which is going to allow for some of the things that I've already mentioned. So there will be the ability with Invenio to deposit multiple files as part of one core deposit. So you can have the versioning of specific files. There will be the option to create collections of deposits. So hopefully what we envision with that is that you could potentially create a collection of a bunch of deposits of things that you want to read or share, and you could connect those together. An expanded list of deposit types, so even more options for you can add. So this is something that is in the beginning phases, and we are really excited about it because it's going to make our repository even more robust. Updates to profiles and groups are also things being discussed to make it where profiles have even more customizable options, can be linked to even more areas of the Commons, and we're excited about that too, as well as groups. We are still in the process of evaluating what tools we have in groups and what would be even more useful for collaboration, and so these are all things that are being discussed. On the other end, we are also hoping to have more workshops similar to this one and more community-focused events where you all will have the chance to either connect with the Commons team or with other users on the Commons. Hopefully, as part of the workshops, we will have more MSU Commons workshops specifically where we might dive into something like digital presence or community moderation. And Kristen and I, once again, will be here to talk through stuff like that, as well as other members of the Commons team in their knowledge areas. And so we're really hoping from a community perspective that you can all come along with us on this journey as we continue to enhance the Commons. And I mentioned this earlier on, but we are also looking at disciplinary support for STEM, and that's going to be something that is an ongoing update we will be making. So there will be more opportunities for STEM folks to be integrated into the Commons. And so right now on MSU Commons, obviously anybody can join, but then we also want to have more opportunities there as well. All right, I am now going to pass the mic over to Kristen to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available to you, because I know you probably have questions. You all have already asked questions, but Kristen's going to talk a little more about, as you're working on the Commons and you need support, what can you do?
Yeah, and this should be fairly quick. The information here at the top is how to contact our help desk. So this phone number that's listed goes to me and my colleagues in the library. These are the hours that we typically answer calls, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday. This is whenever the university is open. And obviously, if you call, we'll get started with whatever your issue is right away, even if it's something that needs a little bit of investigation. If you either email us at the email address that's there on the slide, or you go to the link that is a form that you can fill out, those we try to respond to within 24 to 48 hours. And again, we will help with what we can, what we have the knowledge and resources to help with, and then if need be, we'll kick something up to tier 2 support, folks like Larissa and Bonnie, to get their support and input. This link also here, support.hcommons.org, has a multitude of various resources that you can take advantage of depending on what areas of the Commons you're using. And then, like we said, more updates on workshops and events we hope to have coming soon. And then there are a couple of social ways that you can follow Humanities Commons if you're interested. We will also, at the conclusion of the workshop, I have access in our library's registration system to the list of folks that were registered today. And I will make sure that I send you both the link to the slides and the link to the recording once we have those ready. So look for that from me, if not today, early next week. Are there specific help desk related questions I can answer? Okay, back to you, Larissa.
Thanks, Kristen. And I also am just going to say that the help desk is an amazing group of people, and they are always, especially we tend to get a lot of Commons questions at the beginning of the semester as more courses are using the Commons, and they are super great with answering things quickly and in a timely manner. And as I said, I just wanted to shamelessly plug how awesome they are. So big shout out to you, Kristen, and your team. And then, as Kristen said, Commons Help and Support, that is our main support page for if you are wondering, you want to go through the specifics of what I talked about today of how to create a group or how to create a site. That's our place where all of our support pages are. So definitely check that out. Okay. So now I want to open it up for if there are any additional questions. You all have had some really good questions as we've been going, but if there's anything else that we didn't cover, or if there's something that perhaps you wanted us to cover and we didn't talk about yet, this is a good time. So feel free to either write your question in the chat, or if you want to just, raise your hand and unmute yourself, whatever you feel like you want to ask still that we haven't covered. This is our moment.
I think I'll probably have more questions as I get stuff together, but it was really helpful to have more of a conceptual idea of how the core repository works, and that for some things on our site and everything else, it can be private or hidden. So I really appreciate the large overview here.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. As I said, the Commons, there's a lot going on in the best way, and that there's a lot of different kind of caveats. So I hope that this was helpful in getting a little better understanding of how the different pieces work together. And as we already said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will definitely support whatever you're looking for. Right. I see there are some people that are dropping off. We will hang out here also for a few extra minutes. If you have anything you want to ask, that was not that you'd rather wait a few minutes to ask. But actually, since we do have a few people that are dropping off, I'm going to move to the next slide, and then we can continue the Q&A if we want. So we do have a short survey, and I'm going to, Kristen, do you have the link to the survey that you can drop in the chat? I'm struggling with it. Okay. Great. So we have a short survey. We are, as I've mentioned, we're really hoping to have more workshops like this, and we'd love your feedback on how you felt about this workshop today. This is totally anonymous. It's just 6 questions, but if you have any feedback for us, we'd really appreciate it as we move to have more workshops like this. If there is something that I talked about, but you want a deeper dive, or you would like some more resources, we would really value any feedback you have on that. And we'll make sure that we also do email this out when we send the recording and the slides. So that way, if you need a few minutes to think about it, you can. But it's a quick survey. It's totally anonymous, as I said. So that would be really valued. Any feedback that you have on that. All right. I am going to pause once again to see if there's any more questions. Otherwise, that's going to be it for the moment. But thank you again for being here. It's been really exciting to talk about the Commons, and we're, as a team, really excited about the directions that we're moving, and are really also excited about having more workshops like this to get to talk to you and talk to your colleagues. So Thank you very much. And as I said, we'll hang out a few extra minutes if anybody has anything else. So thanks again.
Yes, thanks everybody. We appreciate your interest and attention.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks.